Hello, Internet, and welcome to Wednesday's Serial, where I'm running out of comics, but I'm not running out of liquor. Yeehaw!
Yeah. So damn nerdy. I'll take you to the comic shop. I'll show you all the bills I drop.
So this week I only got one DC comic, and it's that Batman Eternal thing. Oh man, they show what Falcone coming back means, and they're really kind of playing with different aspects of the universe and taking some liberty with it being the new 52. There's even a drop-in of 0 Year. Oh, you know that other crappy Batman book going on right? Okay, maybe not crappy, but comparatively. Yeah, this is really exciting. There's a whole huge move in here with Gotham PD. There's the reintroduction of Stephanie Brown into the new 52. This is just frickin' pretty awesome, and oh man, yeah, for a DC Weekly, knocking the socks off everything, so there you go. Then let's talk about the best book of the week, month, year, ever. Well, maybe not this issue in particular, but you know what I mean. I love me about Turtles, and this was Turtles, but this was really Casey Jones dealing with his father, Hun, and the relations and kind of where they're at. And it's a really powerful issue, and what's even more powerful about it is that there's a little bit of fighting, but there's not really a fight in here. It's more of a really powerful discussion, and it hits a lot harder than if there was just some lame action dropped in for no good reason. It's kind of sad to say that it feels that it's bold that they didn't do that, because the story clearly was just calling for it to be this once they took it in a certain place, and I'm just glad that they didn't reduce it. And it's just amazing how by making a simple, decent decision to allow the story to unfold lets it be that much more powerful. But it really does, and I think this is a really interesting issue to kind of explore some arranged family and kind of someone seeing their life past drinking but still making bad decisions, but maybe for the right reasons. And it's actually really interesting for that. So I know some people have been kind of hopping onto Turtles more and more, and I feel like this issue, whereas you wouldn't get the full understanding of everything, I feel like you'd get enough from this issue on its own that you could just get the most out of the issue. I don't want to say enjoy, because it is a kind of dark story. So Daredevil 2, we're back in the saddle again. It's kind of weird that this is issue 2, but it feels like we've been here so much longer. Yeah, so Mad in LA, and they allude to a certain criminal of the past coming back, and I'm sure that's going to be pretty interesting. But what is more interesting is there's this character, the Shroud, who is blind and kind of has extrasensory things like Matt, but it's not like that one villain that was at the end of the last run. But he's definitely going to be a player, and makes an interesting move at the end where he seems like he'd be just a goof villain. One little twist and one little setup makes him a very different thing, and it's like we see a bit of a character arc all played within one issue. So cool and exciting stuff. Okay, so Electra 1, Del Mundo and Alfonso on the art duties are just incredible. I mean, above anything else, this book is just pretty freaking beautiful, which fits, and they do a lot. They do a lot to create elegant page design and try to display elegance within the character, and it's just incredibly well executed. Blackman here is setting something up and trying to make Electra stand out on her own. I know there's been Electra series in the past. I don't know anything about them, and there definitely is kind of an impetus with this issue to make a point that she's kind of been something else all along. They just want to focus on her being an assassin because she wants to focus on being an assassin as well. So this is going to be kind of an interesting take on Electra. And whereas I did enjoy this issue, I would actually really, really highly recommend you wait for the trade for this book, because I feel like that's what I need to do. Because it's rare, because I'm used to just flipping past ads now, but I really felt the difference because of how gorgeous this book looked and how unpoppy it was, but how the flow was. And the ads just broke it. It happens every now and again, but it was very pronounced with this that the ads just broke the flow of this comic. So I feel like this would read better in trade, not necessarily because of the normal reason of the decompressed storytelling, as much as just literally going from page to page is going to feel a lot better in a trade format. So that's my take on this. I don't know. Five Ghosts was fun, but it's everything it has been, and I just flipped through this issue again. Something about this new arc just isn't grabbing me as well, I guess, but I mean, it's good. It just feels like I just kind of tear through the book and I'm done. I really feel like I should be pouring over the art more, but nothing in the book is slowing me down at all either to really make me stop and appreciate it all, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. This is just, yeah, pulpy action adventure, woo! And so, there you go. So, Zero, 7th issue. It was reaching the point where I felt like something had to happen in this issue that was going to kind of upset the flow of what they've done, because they couldn't just keep kind of doing the same thing that they had been doing. As amazing as it has been, it did kind of feel, and maybe it was just the way that they introduced this issue, because they were going to, something drastic changes, and I can't speak to that without, just killing the book, so I'm not going to. But beyond that, there is also a use of hiding something from the reader that you get an idea, but you don't exactly know, and you don't necessarily want to know, given how dark this book goes. That was really very intriguing use, and kudos to them, especially in this Image day and age right now where everything's horror and gore and kind of over the top, especially in this book, which is not reserved necessarily, but it was very good use of restraint and holding something. And what's also interesting about this issue of Zero is, whereas the art is good, and as you can see here, it doesn't feel as monochromatic as other issues. It feels a lot more just kind of like an Image comic, and it really kind of stood out from the rest of the series that way, and almost seeming more normal, but everything being cockeyed from every other issue that's happened so far. And every issue has been its own installment, which makes that so much more impactful. If you guys aren't reading Zero, you need to, because it's not necessarily as eventful as a lot of other comics, and it doesn't feel like there's stuff to talk about. There's something about the mindset and the way it plays and the pacing and the movement that just, it works as a comic. It couldn't really work as anything else, and it's just a very interesting slow drip. Jax and Nina are making a run for it as per the last issue, and the animals start becoming haunted around them, and some really cool visuals, and all the while stuff's just happening, lines are being rattled off, and the action keeps moving. It's just crazy. I mean, just within 3 pages, I think there's more words in here than there was for Five Ghosts, as a point of reference. And it's just crazy, and then they get dragged back, and things get crazier, and we get kind of a hint as to why Jackson's kind of this magnet for this attention. This is really interesting. And reading this, I kind of had a thought. I feel like this book, in some ways, kind of represents a tipping point for where we're at with comics right now. Like, yeah, we have our Marvels, our DCs and stuff, but I feel like this book, in particular, is kind of showing that Image is just kind of over the top now. Like, they're putting out good stuff. They're putting out different stuff. And just because they have a lot of horror books right now, like, if you're looking forward to Nailbiter, which is previewed in the back of this, it's almost a different taste in, like, your horror action, whatever, than this book. Like, they're putting out different stuff, and it's not all meant for the same people. Like, Image is really trying to put out books that people are going to like, and not necessarily everyone, but put out good books, and it's just cool stuff. And is there room for there to be more diversity? Sure, but considering that they're pushing more diversity than any other major comic publisher right now, I don't think it's fair to gripe at them for that. So, yeah. So, Lazarus, I don't know why, reading this, it didn't feel like an Image book to me. It felt like it was being published by someone else, but that's a weird thought, right? So we get a lot of focus on Forever again, and then we get kind of more of these small glimpses into the rest of the world. And whereas there's this interesting flashback moment with Forever and her birthday, and part of why her father was so absent from her life, they're not really justified. It explains it more. I see that moment and I recognize it, but it doesn't, because I feel like her character's so shallow, and that's part of the point of it, but it doesn't do much for me, I guess. I don't necessarily see the point, and then we get these glimpses of society, and it just seems so, like, pointless. I mean, yeah, it's hollow, and it's, you know, this, in a way, post-apocalyptic idea, but it's society collapsing, but it's just, what's the point again? So, I don't know why. I have this weird fascination and intriguement with this title, but I still just... I'm missing some thread, something in this book that I feel like has to come out at some point, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not getting a hint of it. It's weird. I don't know. It's just this weird hollow existence, and it's like, why even bother? It's not even survival. It's just, why? So Tomb Raider 3, it's kind of, this issue illustrates to me why this book almost doesn't really ever have a chance to really stand out. It's caught between a rock and a hard place. You can't go too far into the future because they're going to make another game, and you can't step on those toes. But by going into the past with a game where half the cast was killed during the events of the game, you're not left with a lot. And there's nowhere to really have the story take place. And more know when to let the story take place. And so Laura's supposed to develop a lot and become more of a badass through necessity throughout the game, but here she's showing a lot more badassness, and not in a survival setting, but in a city setting, which makes not necessarily a lot of sense, but it doesn't not make sense either if you're willing to kind of twist a little bit about the character. You start playing with these characters who end up dead, but you're trying to build them up in the past, which isn't necessarily a fault, but it just makes it kind of cockeyed, because you're like, okay, well, they already kind of had their arc and their point, and now we're just kind of building them back and giving them character flaws, and it's just kind of like, oh, well, they're kind of a jerk too, so and it doesn't necessarily make sense in the context of the game anymore. And it's just like, no matter what you do, this story is going to be informed and isn't necessarily going to match up with the game. And it's fine that it doesn't necessarily match up, but because it's not doing anything super interesting or moving fast, it just stalls it out and keeps it from being anywhere. And it kind of sucks, because I feel like if we were reading this without the game, it might be more interesting. Maybe I'm just letting that influence my opinion too much, but it's kind of hard to have this 20-ish hour experience that heavily informs this not also inform your opinion on the, you know, subsequent material directly related to it. Lauren here is kind of the least of the characters, and or she is badass, as mentioned. She's also a bit naive, which really doesn't fit, but I guess it's the idea that she's young. So, I don't know. Well, there was another interesting bit, as this was the only Dark Horse I read this week, and pretty much ever anymore. There was an ad here, change how you look at power, and has Lara Croft and Vale, who I've never heard of, but okay, Ghost and Buffy. And it's kind of, you know, like, ooh, girl power, and not in a, I mean, kind of a lot of what people have been asking for out of their comics, and boom, there you go. But, you know, a comic like Miss Marvel gets a ton of attention. This, not as much. And why not? Just because it's being published by Dark Horse. And that's something, I guess, that kind of undermines the argument whenever we talk about representation or anything, is those characters have been out there, those characters have been tried, and some of them have really good stories, but they don't make the sales for XYZ reason. And so if you're fighting for girl power and you haven't even tried these, least of which being Buffy, I mean, like, Vale or Ghost, I know a couple of people are reading Ghost and seem to be enjoying it. I've heard not one thing about Vale. Are they good? Are they worth mentioning? Why aren't these being advertised? Why aren't these being pushed more? I mean, I guess here you go, here's an ad, but only because we ended up with one of the characters' books do you find out about it. And so it's kind of this weird circular logic of like, well, nobody's buying it, but no one's heard of it. Well, how do you hear about it if you don't buy it? And it's just, it's bizarre marketing. But in the day of Twitter and Facebook and social media and just the internet advertising, like, Dark Horse could be doing smarter things to be pushing this stuff. So, but at the same time, they're putting it out. So you're gonna yell at them for not pushing their stuff hard enough? No, that's not fair to them either. They're the ones putting forth the effort, and then the fans aren't pushing it hard enough for it to make a difference when it's what a lot of them are asking for. So, just a weird disconnect with some stuff I've been noticing. And because you people apparently like to hear me ramble, you've made it this far. At the end of my last video, I kind of asked for lesser known Batman arcs. If you have another one, or if you already gave me one, screw you. But if someone made this or whatever, let me know. I want to do a video on some of that, but I haven't finished reading because I got a lot of suggestions. And I've worked a good number of the way through. I've read I've read a lot, but I think 3 of the ones were the ones actually suggested. And I'm still working through, and it's a good chunk of reading, and I'm enjoying it, but, you know, everything else is taking some time, so good stuff there, and expect a little bit more Batman talk soon.